All right. Welcome, everybody, to our Language and Area Studies career panel. My name is Carolina Sarria, and I am actually one of the career coaches on our Liberal Arts Career Services team. So happy to be co-sponsoring this event with our friends over at the Texas Language Center. For those who are just coming in, yes, a reminder here that this QR code is your key to check in with your EID. While we're getting everything set up, I will go back to the screen in case you need more time to get checked in. However, I would like to introduce our office at Liberal Arts Career Services. If you're not already familiar with what we do and who we actually serve all of you, all undergraduate and graduate liberal arts students and alumni up to a year after graduation, with all of the services that you see listed here, and more, with employer events and large career fairs, which we actually have our spring career and internship fair coming up this Wednesday, February the 26th at the Texas Union Ballroom right here on campus. So there's many ways that we support students in their career development, and we're just so excited that this is one event of many that you will hopefully attend through the work that we do, and hope to see you at some of our future events. Using this QR code here, you can visit our website, and the slides will be sent out to all attendees following the panel. So you can actually use that QR code or the direct link to check out our website for frequently asked questions and appointment requests, anything that you might need in that case. But I would like to turn it over to our friends over at the Texas Language Center to introduce themselves, their office, and that way we can get started with our exciting panel.
Great. Thank you. I'll start. I am Paola Boucher, the Senior Program Coordinator of the Texas Language Center, and we promote languages and culture teaching at UT. We have many things that we do, and I want to talk about a little bit about our monthly Language Matters series that is open to everybody, where we usually have a thematic talks that delve into anything that is language, and you're all welcome to come to those events and follow us in Instagram, which we post everything related to languages at UT, scholarships, language events, opportunities. So you're free to go to our website and follow our link. And I would like to pass it on to our director of the Texas Language Center to introduce himself.
Paola, thank you so much for that. And thank you, Carolina, for organizing this event and making sure that the Texas Language Center was such a part of it, because it's something we care very deeply about, of linking our language education at the University of Texas with being able to not only provide quality language instruction, but also set pathways for careers, future opportunities for study abroad, and really making language learning a lifelong education. So thank you for that. My name is Tomás Jesus Garza. Tom Garza. I'm the founding director of the Texas Language Center. My official designation is associate professor in the Department of Slavic and Eurasian Studies. In spite of my Mexican background, my main language of research and instruction is Russian. So I'm very, very excited to be a part of this effort this evening and this afternoon as well. We just want to add to those wonderful remarks that Paola made. Largely, our center is focused on trying to ensure that the faculty who teach the courses in languages and cultures at the University of Texas provide the highest quality instruction as possible. And that goes from everything from textbook selection, material selection, approaches to language learning, possibilities for study and work abroad, application for scholarships and fellowships to continue work and elsewhere. But as Paola mentioned, we also very much are front-facing for the students, including everything from events that we sponsor at our TLC website. Just go to TLC, University of Texas, and you can find us, or scan the QR code. We also provide testing for students interested in fulfilling their language requirements, or testing out of a language to allow them to go to a higher level of proficiency. So please do check out our services, and we look forward to seeing you both in your language classrooms as well as at the Texas Language Center. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. introduction to the Texas Language Center. So the format for this panel is going to start off with some introductions from our panelists themselves, of course, followed by a moderated discussion, after which we will open that Q&A forum for students to feel free to ask any and all questions they have of our panelists, things relating to career development and career readiness as they pertain to language and area studies. And so with that, I will turn it over to the panelists. Anyone is welcome to get us started with those introductions.
Lead the way, Carolina. So should I just start? Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Ariel Pitre Young. My pronouns are she, her. I am currently an academic advisor in the Department of Government, but I was a government and French double major at UT. Based on my Creole heritage, I chose French as my language. And then in graduate school, as a PhD student in government, also at UT, I I undertook Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, and Montenegrin language training. And I continued that as a Fulbright English teaching assistant in Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, where I edited texts, manuscripts, books, their translations from Bosnian to English, and ignited and continued my passion for language learning and acquisition there. So now I'm really glad to be back at the university and encouraging students to pursue language training and exploring those paths and opportunities for themselves.
Thanks, Ariel. I can go next. Hi, everybody. My name is Austin Allday. He, él, ella pronouns. You might guess by those pronouns that the languages I studied at UT were Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese. And I'll talk about this more later, but my language studies have been fundamental for my career. I'm now 7 years into a career in the tech industry, specifically account management, working with customers all over North America and Latin America, including Brazil. So it's great to be here.
Hi, everyone. I can go next. My name is Tanya Ragu. I graduated with degrees in Plan 2 Middle Eastern Studies and Arabic in May 2022. After that, I was a Boren Scholar, which I highly recommend everyone here to check out. It was a really wonderful way to spend sort of a fifth year and immersive year in Amman, Jordan. I am interested in pursuing a career in foreign correspondence, and I'm completing my master's in international affairs and journalism at Columbia right now. So it really makes sense to continue to, work on and build on my language skills. And it really wouldn't be possible to have an interest in international journalism without the background in language studies in the language that people in that part of the world speak. So I'm happy to answer any questions and keep in touch with any of you all who would like to continue to speak after this.
And I'll go last. My name is Cameron Waltz. I'm UT Austin, class of 2023. My language of choice was Chinese to begin and later on Korean during college. I began my journey of studying Mandarin Chinese when I was in high school. I was very fortunate to have a public school in Texas that provided Mandarin Chinese lessons. Managed to do it all 4 years, do AP, and I guess I represent here more of the public service trajectory of using your language. And part of that is that I was, just like Tanya, very fortunate to reap numerous US taxpayer dollars to fund me to go abroad multiple times. In high school, right between graduating high school and coming to UT Austin, I spent a summer in China through the State Department. I then did a Boren scholarship in Taiwan as a junior and came back to later on take Korean at UT before doing a CLS scholarship in Korea. So I've been a full beneficiary of those taxpayer dollars. At UT, I studied international relations, Asian studies, government, and Chinese. Managed to take advantage of a lot of that overlap there to really get the most out of my regional expertise. And I went into the career of policy. Right now, I am a James C. Gaither Jr. Fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. I do policy-facing, public-facing research on U.S.-China relations, particularly in the security realm. And hopefully I'll end up taking on a career in public service. And I'm looking forward to sharing some of those insights with you.
Carolina, are we ready just to get into the discussion now?
Exactly. Yes. Let's go.
Brilliant. Thank you. And thank you all for those wonderful introductions. And already you've kind of put in fodder for the first round of questions here, just I think to get things started, because you've all of you spoke a bit about the languages you've chosen and the way those have affected your career paths. What about the larger picture of choosing your major? How did you go about that process? What inspired you, in a sense, to pursue the major you chose? And did you always think that from the beginning these would be majors that would be able to be applied in the careers you now find yourself in? And why don't I, so that we can make this scene move more smoothly, let me just get one of you to start off for us. And then if others of you would like to join in the conversation, please do. Austin, could I ask you to address that question first and to get us started?
Sure thing. Yeah, it makes sense actually, because I realized after getting my introduction that I didn't specify what my majors were at UT. So I actually studied Latin American studies, and I had a double major in the Department of Spanish and Portuguese. So language and culture, in addition to the broader survey of the social sciences that I got in Latin American studies. And my parents' one contingency was that I had to get what was then called the Business Foundation certificate. They said I could study whatever I wanted in liberal arts, but I had to have something in business. My understanding is it's now a minor, or it's changed names or some sort of, they've rebranded. Anyways, I grew up speaking Spanish and felt very fortunate growing up in Houston, such a multicultural city, that I was always surrounded by Latin American culture. And when I then, by luck, I believe, found out that the Latin American Studies Department had funding from the government and from the Lozano Long family, it felt much like a no-brainer to why not go to the university where my family's gone for a couple generations. I loved the city of Austin and get to study something I'm deeply interested in and also have tuition covered. So for me, it was a bit of a no-brainer. And then along the way, I was informed that in the Spanish and Portuguese department, students were encouraged to explore across the gap, across the aisle, if you will. We were not required to only spend time in Spanish. I came in with a ton of AP credit, which also placed me into upper divisions, freed me up to spend a lot more time on Portuguese. And I ended up falling in love with this country that I had otherwise not really been exposed to at all. Yeah, so I took the accelerated Portuguese for Spanish speakers track, which if you are a Spanish speaker and you have time in your schedule, you have any interest, I highly recommend it. The professors were phenomenal. And yeah.
Terrific. That's a great way to start us off here. Did any of the others of you want to join in that part of the conversation?
Sure, I can talk about Middle Eastern studies. Fortunately, at UT, we really do have a strong and phenomenal Arabic studies program, and I really benefited from that all 4 years I was at UT. Similarly to Cameron, I was on a State Department's scholarship. It was sort of like a study abroad program for high school students right after I graduated from high school called NISLE Y. I know a lot of us here aren't, and anyone here is not eligible for that anymore, unfortunately. But that is sort of like, I would say, a domino. That was the first one to fall, and then sort of jump-started my Arabic study, and I just continued to go on that journey ever since. So NISLE Y was essentially a summer language program for students who are interested in parts of the world where that language is not commonly taught in an American high school. So I decided to study Arabic. After I spent a summer in Amman, Jordan, I was just convinced that I had to continue to learn Arabic. And then I found out UT has just this really strong curriculum from beginner to advanced to superior level in Arabic studies. So that really worked out well in my favor. So every semester I essentially kept taking Arabic classes at UT, and one sort of built upon another. And it became natural at that point. I had gained enough credit that I would qualify to be a Middle Eastern Studies and Arabic major, and that sort of married the language training with the area studies and history classes, etc. So I was also on sort of a public service or government track while I was at UT, but for different reasons, I became more interested in journalism and looking at the region from a journalistic lens. So but still without the language training early on in Arabic, it just puts you at such an advantage if you are interested in pursuing a career in media and in journalism. It's really essential at this point that you speak the languages in the regions you want to cover. And that sort of has led me to where I am now.
Anya, thank you for that. And actually, you in your response anticipated another area I wanted to explore, and I'd like to maybe toss this add-on question and ask Ariel and Cameron to sort of carry the conversation in that direction and add on anything they might want to. And that is, could you identify any particular pivotal moments that in your undergraduate years shape your career trajectory? Did maybe a study abroad experience of getting a particular fellowship or scholarship, falling into, say, the flagship program in Arabic? What was there a moment that, as in Tanya's case, kind of changed your trajectory toward where you are now? If I could get Ariel and Cameron to start us off in that side of the conversation.
You go ahead, Ariel.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Cameron. I actually have two. One is like from a shifting towards what I want, and then another was recognizing what I didn't like so much and how that kind of shifted me towards what I wanted. So the first was that I previously coming into UT, I thought that I wanted to go into politics and public service, like as a representative or elected official. And then I went to a career fair for interning at the Capitol, and I realized that this was not going to be a good fit for me. And it totally like turned everything upside down of what I thought I wanted. So I do remember sobbing in my West Campus apartment over that. But it ended up being great because it forced me to start proactively pursuing all the ways that a government major can be applied and the tools that I can gain from that. So, research or teaching or more private or, government sector work. And so the positive aspect of an experience that shifted me towards what would be resonating with me. Um, One is being a research intern for an amazing professor in the government department, Dr. Amy Liu. I ended up learning about social science research that I didn't know existed and that I actually liked researching and gathering data and digging really, really deep into numbers and stories and whatnot, and connected to digging deeper into stories and leveraging my personal interests and like using an academic lens to explore those is I ended up taking as an elective a course called Punks and Divas in Southeastern Europe with Dr. Vladislav Baranya. Yes, Dr. Garza, you know. And it married my passion of punk rock, music, cultural expression with politics and social phenomena in the former Yugoslavia and Eastern Europe and intersections that I did not know, were present in that part of the world. And so that class, what really just was an elective for me to explore and fill up time in my senior year, ended up sowing the seeds for the projects that would be my graduate school, like PhD application packet, that would be my research interests framing my entire grad school experience. So basically using experiences, listening to myself that guided me ultimately in the directions of what would resonate with me most. Yeah, and just, a couple different ways that I got there, but get there regardless. Yeah, that was my story.
Terrific, Ariel. Thank you so much, and thank you for the shout outs to particular specific faculty members who really had played part of the role in that pivot. It's such an important thing. Students often don't think that it's the faculty also get great gratification of seeing students succeed as you all have done. Terrific, Cameron. What about your pivotal moments?
I think I'm one of the rare exceptions in undergraduate students who came in with a fairly good idea of what they wanted to do and continued on that path throughout. But there still are some very important moments that I say really shaped to where I came today. I entered college thinking that I was going to be a foreign service officer and that I was going to be a diplomat at the U.S. Department of State. And I'd say that probably the pivotal moment where that changed and I realized where my true passions lay in research was when I was abroad in Taiwan. I was there for 9 months on a board scholarship. And eventually, and this is something that I think all of us in this panel can perhaps relate to, I eventually reached that moment where I had my first dream in a foreign language. And that's when it really became real that I actually knew this language and I could live it, I could work it, and I could also think critically and debate and write in it. And I think that once I really became immersed and was able to return with full language fluency in my work and my research, I realized just how much textual knowledge in my primary sources for my research really helped me come up with original ideas for my policy recommendations and policy analysis. And, I continued to pursue that in my undergraduate thesis. I got to do multiple language research oriented jobs and internships throughout college. And that ended up bringing me to where I am now in my current research, where I work entirely in primary sources and secondary sources from Chinese literature. And so I think that flipping that switch to really getting to my language goal unlocked that area of research passion for me that brought me to where I am now, maybe a little bit parallel into the side of being a diplomat.
So inspirational. And Cameron, you, like each one of you, has kind of anticipated our sort of next line of questioning and inquiry here. So I appreciate that answer very much. You made reference to your time abroad, and I wanted to ask some others to chime in on this question. Maybe Austin, kind of we've circled back around to you again, maybe to start off with, how did your time abroad, including things like Fulbright study abroad programs that you may have been on, Borans and others, help to shape your professional outlook and ultimately where you are now, as Cameron referred to in his last answer?
Sure thing. Yes. If I could go back to college, maybe one thing I would have done more was avail myself of those taxpayer dollars a little bit more. The only scholarships that I used were via they're called the Teresa Lozano Long, through the Lozano Long Institute of Latin American Studies. And I'm going to keep plugging them because that department is the reason I am where I am today. But I had the chance to study abroad in Santiago de Chile the spring of my sophomore year. And it was an incredible experience for me. I had already traveled a reasonable amount to different Spanish-speaking countries. But like I mentioned in my original answer earlier today, I was mostly familiar with Mexico. And by that, I mean the northern part and Mexico City, which you can't really reference Mexican culture as a monolith because there doesn't exist one Mexican culture, but I digress. Getting to spend 6 months in a South American country that is so different than the stereotype of Latin America that we are kind of familiar with in the States or Texas, ended up making me question a lot of my own biases that I had approached the region with, they were blind spots for me. I had grown up my whole life speaking a second language, but had no idea that you could speak a language so differently, that you could live so differently in Spanish. Hot take from some people, Chilean Spanish is not necessarily Spanish, but we could have a separate conversation. For those of you that are in Austin, like Tanya said, I'm happy to stay in touch. I recently moved back and I'm looking to stay connected with the university community. But do you think that's a sufficient answer for the time being?
Just wonderful, wonderful. I was wondering, Tanya, if you wanted to add anything about your study abroad experience, or what might have been that change for you.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's really such a privilege to spend any amount of time abroad, especially when I would encourage you to look into these scholarships that will not only allow you to travel, but really immerse yourself and really not just feel like a tourist, but really like a traveler, someone who integrates into daily life and kind of gets into the layers of society and language. And that's the only way I think you can get at those things in the bigger picture in any of these parts of the world is by spending time there and developing those relationships. And I found that really helpful for my interest in journalism as I was transitioning from undergrad into these ambitions to be a foreign correspondent. And the only way was to continue to develop the language skills and also just develop sort of this ability to spend time with people who are so different from yourself and connect with them. And I noticed that because of Arabic skills, I was able to integrate and not feel like such a stranger to those people, get to know my neighbors on a really deep and authentic level. And there's no other way to really replicate any of that. So it was such a privilege, I think, to spend that time as a Boren scholar. That was also where I did some freelance reporting for the Jordan Times, which is the English newspaper in the country. So it was really wonderful to dip my toe in to this new world of journalism and just the Middle East generally, and have the opportunity to also travel to the neighboring countries, to Jerusalem, to Lebanon, to Egypt. So yeah, I mean, I can't recommend this enough. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being all of you for being such advocates for study abroad and getting out of Texas for a little while, being a good thing sometimes. I wanted to ask, since a couple of you mentioned getting support, and I know Ariel, you were one of them who got during your undergraduate time FLAS support, foreign language area scholarship supports in our 5 area study centers, and who knows what tomorrow may bring with, as we're seeing some of these programs, money coming out of Washington being well, I won't get into that too much, but just let's hope that the future holds on to these foreign language area study scholarships, because they've been such a central part of us creating a core of international diplomacy, international studies, and generally supporting study abroad. You can do as either a show of hands or just simply call out. Any others of you have FLAS support during your undergraduate time, and maybe a word or two about it to any of the undergraduates who are on the call right now about what they might look for in pursuing a FLAS or FLAS funding for summer or academic year. Maybe Ariel, could you talk about your?
I can share mine.
Thank you.
So I was a FLAS recipient while I was in graduate school, and I received both summertime grants and a grant during the academic year. And all of my grants were for Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, and Montenegrin. And it's something that I wish I knew about FLAS in undergrad, but know that it's not too late if you are undergrad, and keep it in mind for grad school. But not only was I able to honestly pay my rent in the summertime, I was able to, with that funding, it provides financial security for you to devote yourself to intensive language study. So I was able to um, learn and study a year's worth of Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, Montenegrin in like a month and a half in the summertime, and then throughout the entire academic year. And I would recommend looking for programs that teach your language of focus. For me, that was the University of Pittsburgh, because they are one of the best instructors of Slavic languages, as Dr. Garza knows. And I got really great instruction from um, professors and instructors who were from the region, from the former Yugoslavia, Eastern Europe, Russia, and all of the cultural experiences and lived experiences that they bring too. So the beautiful thing about language is not only is it like language study, but also the cultural components and activities, learning about cultural mores, cooking, things like that. All of that is a part of the story and something that FLAS can fund for you. So I love FLAS and hopefully you do too. So keep that in mind.
I'm going to have to recruit you, Ariel, to write our next flash brochure for us. That was
Thank
just
you.
so incredibly well said. Couldn't do it better. I thank you for that. Let's do a bit of a pivot here to you now, wizened postgraduate, moving into graduate and life after your bachelor's degrees. Um, what now, with 2020 hindsight, looking at yourself as an undergraduate student, could you give as advice or suggestion or heads up to current undergraduates who are thinking about possibly graduate school or any number of the wonderful careers all four of you are looking or already in or looking forward to? What advice could you give them now before that you wish you had gotten when you were an undergraduate about pursuing grad school? Maybe Cameron, you want to start us off? Your name just caught my eye. There was no other ulterior motive.
Sure, and I can actually offer some timely insights, seeing as I'm actually currently in the application process for graduate school. And the first piece of advice that I would offer to every person considering graduate school, unless if you have an offer to a fully funded PhD program, take a break. I would recommend that you do not go immediately into graduate school after your undergrad. You should live your life and enjoy existence of not being a student, because it will A, make you a better applicant, and B, make sure you're sure of your choices. The second thing I'd offer is, and these are going to be a bit more practical before I get somewhere a bit more lofty. The second practical point is I'd recommend that you have a clear uh, cost value proposition of why exactly you're going to graduate school. There are many arguments for, pursuing a PhD, a master's degree, a JD, or an MD. But I think you should be very clear with yourself about how you plan on paying for it and whether you can get your program to pay for it. And especially that applies to a master's degree, is consider how much you can get your program to pay for, because you don't want to be left handling a bill for something that is maybe not as productive on the back end as a law degree or a medical degree. But the last thing I'd say is that, if you are considering pursuing continued study, it is good in its own right. And if you truly do love it, it is worthwhile. It's just the most important thing is making sure that you don't take a misstep, and that you give yourself the time to make sure it is something you want, rather than it being something you sleepwalk into because you're not sure what to do.
Terrific advice. Terrific advice. Could anyone else? Tanya, did you want to chime in?
Sure, I can talk about what I wish I had known. I mean, pursuing journalism, I think it really felt like a far-fetched dream when I was at UT, because I really didn't know any other foreign correspondents or people who had even pursued something like that while I was in undergrad. But I would say that my reasons for pursuing graduate school was to be surrounded by that community and understand this is very much possible. This is, practically still a pathway versus there's basically two routes to pursue international journalism, from my understanding. One is to sort of uproot and move to the region of your interest, learn the language, and then begin to contact editors in the United States with your work that, hey, I'm here. For example, in Istanbul, I can speak Turkish, and here's my body of work, and I'm open to any assignments. The other path is to go to graduate school, and I feel like when I was on my Boren scholarship, it gave me some exposure to the first path, which is to go to a country and see what the landscape looks like, and see if you would be a good fit and you can offer something from that part of the world. But it became clear to me I wanted to come back to graduate school to get the training to operate in conflict zones and just high intensity areas in the Middle East, especially with the current, political affairs as of lately in that part of the world. So I'm really grateful that I made that decision to come back to the Columbia Journalism School. It's been a really wonderful opportunity, and it's lived up to what my expectations were from out of a graduate school like this. But when I came to the graduate school, like I said, I took 2 years in between. I really knew what I wanted to get out of the program and what my goals were when I graduated from here. So I would say to really, yeah, have a clear purpose and sort of set some personal goals in terms of what you envision your life and your personal and professional life to look like when you graduate.
Terrific advice, Tanya. Thank you. So just before we're about to open it up for Q&A from those who are also on the call, Austin, did you have your kind of parting shot for us here on uh, that kind of advice to the next generation?
Sure. I think Cameron and Tanya nailed it. Make sure you have a plan. I highly recommend taking a step away as well. School's expensive, and in my experience, language skills are highly sought after. They are skills. English might be the global language of commerce, but a very low percentage of the world actually speaks it fluently, and companies who need to do work abroad need people with language skills. So there's nothing wrong with taking a step away, maybe making some money for a while, getting paid for those hard-earned skills, those hours that you put in the classroom. And for me, I would say I would love to go to grad school. I just have not settled on one idea yet. I wish I could go and get a master's of public policy and a JD and a this and a that. And I wish I could study 8 different languages at the same time. So, but for me, working and always working with a regional focus on Latin America has been crucial for me to keep my Portuguese skills sharp. I don't think I could forget Spanish if someone paid me to, but my Portuguese skills in the seasons where I don't use it as much with work, I do feel those muscles begin to weaken a little bit more. So that's my if you do take a step away, maybe try and spin your language skills into part of your job so that you're still sharp when you if your grad school endeavors have a language lens to it later on.
Beautiful. Thank you. And thank you all to all four of you. You're not only just such great ambassadors, representatives of the University of Texas, but of our programs and our instruction that we've hopefully not just delivered, but really you all just have used it to craft beautiful pathways for yourself. You all are to be so commended for the work you've already done and clearly what you still have yet to come. We're all looking forward to that. Let's move it into the Q&A session. Carolina, if you want to work your magic here and getting some questions out to our panelists.
Absolutely. I do see actually a question at the top of the chat here, a couple just from the beginning of the event. But Mara asks, when considering a career path, do you ensure that you can use that language in your everyday job? Followed by, how do you go about continuing your language education if either of those aspects is something that someone can speak to?
I'm happy to take a stab, but if anybody else feels strongly, okay. The answer to the first part is yes. I always make sure that the language piece is present in my jobs. Not only is it something I'm passionate about, like it makes it easier for me to log into work every single day. And 6, 7 years down this road, I'm to the point where I actually prefer working with people from Latin America versus the US, especially in the technology industry. When you're on the vendor side, people can be very transactional with you, whereas Latin America tends to be a region where people place a lot higher emphasis on the relations, the relationships that they build. The second piece was about continuing language education, right, Carolina? Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, I can speak to this too. A lot of private sector companies, especially in tech, will offer a learning and development stipend. So if you have language goals and if you can make a business case that it's pertinent to whatever role you're in, you can oftentimes tap into that learning and development stipend. I actually work at a learning and development tech company, so this is like double dipping for me. But And additionally, beyond my Latin American customers, I've also stepped into a new role as of January where I'm working with uh, customers in the US and Canada as well. And so, sticking with my contrarian streak established by my time in Chile, I'm actually learning Canadian French to begin working with French Canadian customers as well. I speak it fine. I'm not quite to the point yet where I would include it, shout it from the rooftops that I speak it. But it felt pertinent to raise it here in this answer. So I use my L&D stipend. I have weekly classes. Um, I use just about every language learning app you've ever thought of. I don't use Duolingo because I don't think it's helpful. Again, things we can discuss over coffee if you're in Austin or over Zoom, but that's me.
Oh, can I add something, Dr. Garza?
Of course, of course.
Okay, great. I can speak a little bit to continuing language study, after school or when you're not in class. A big part of when I was a French major of practicing French and getting more exposure to it is that like time and exposure is everything. So I encourage for what that looked like for me was listening to French music. I had a college radio show all about French music, film, cinema, television, getting exposure to hearing people talk and expressing themselves or ideas. So, for example, one thing I was told like years ago, reading, it's okay that you don't know every single word if you want to like pick up a magazine or a book, but what you're seeing is sentence construction and people expressing their thoughts on paper and how grammar looks. So even just like getting that sight time. So what I do now, even though I'm not a student and I don't live in Bosnia anymore, I am very much in love with Yugoslav punk music. So I'm listening to a lot of music all the time, Yugoslav cinema, Eastern European cinema. So I can still like hear people talking and getting that fluency and also talking to myself and other people when I meet people that speak the language. But that's what that looks like for me.
Carolina, are there other questions that are in the chat?
Yes, I would love to also offer the opportunity for students to unmute themselves and maybe introduce a little bit about yourselves, your majors, and introduce any questions there. We do have a one in the chat. I'm not sure if the student actually is here and might be able to introduce themselves and ask the question to the panel out loud.
Oh, hi. I think it's me. Sorry, I can't really use my video right now, but
Oh.
I'm a Harry. It's in the chat, but I'll just explain it. So I'm a junior undergraduate. I'm a Plan 2 and psychology double major. And I'm a minor in Hindi. And so like my story basically is like I'm a Tamilian, but I studied Hindi in college because I wanted to understand India better. And I really am interested in Korean as well. And so for my senior year, I really want to take Korean. But I also want to go to law school as well. And so in my gap year, I want to do language immersion, but I also want to make sure that I can do something that I can like create a line of reasoning for my law school applications. And so I was wondering if you had any advice on how to not justify your passions for like graduate school purposes, but that's kind of like where I'm at.
I can take this one. Um, I think that, and I've come across this before, and this is as someone who also ended up picking up Korean late in college, as sort of as like a bit of a passion project. Also as like a sort of a career booster because it matched my Mandarin Chinese. I'd say that now, of course, whenever you do these kinds of applications, whether it's for a graduate school or for a Rhodes Scholarship, they really like to see a through line. I think that you don't need to feel the need to pigeonhole yourself into creating a narrative that is cohesive and clean for what you love. If you want to learn a language, you should just go learn it. And I think that if you make that just very clear that like you're a serendipitous person, you have a passion for this language and you wanted to try something new, that authenticity on its face is perhaps more interesting than someone who had an elaborate master plan to somehow weave their knowledge of Hindi and Korean into their legal career. I think that I think that, if you're looking for a bit of application advice, I'd recommend that you just say that you took the time to explore the things you love and to spend time outside of school and to pursue new passions. I mean, that to me is a bit more interesting than having to inauthentically manufacture a narrative that isn't true.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful.
I have a question that was direct messaged over here, asking about how you would go about seeking professional development opportunities and upskilling in your career. So this could be, I guess, outside of the languages that you're continuing to learn and doing that kind of continuous education, but it kind of sounds like any aspect that might be relevant to careers such as networking and kind of expanding and someone who is just starting out and getting familiar with those topics, if anyone can kind of speak about their own experience there as well.
I can go first. To the networking piece. Is that what you were asking, Carolina? Okay. Um, I would say don't be scared to reach out to people. Don't just ask for help. I would try and offer something in your outreach as well. Like do your research on who this person is, what gets them going, what do they post about, what does the specific think tank government center that Cameron works at, what work does Cameron put out? What is something that could add value to Cameron's, what's something that Cameron would want to read about? What's a story that Tanya would want to tell you about? What is something like a cool Eastern European film that Ariel would want to? So do your research. Don't just ask for favors, but don't be afraid to reach out and ask for, and when you do reach out, have a specific ask, whether it's for, hey, I'd love to pick your brain for 20 minutes, for 30 minutes. Could we grab coffee? So and so referred me to you. They said you'd be a great person to reach out to. The power of warm intros is also important. Like people, there's a lot to be said about social proof in the sense that, oh, Dr. Garza is very well respected in his field. If I reached out to one of his colleagues, it's not going to land in the same way as if Dr. Garza were to present me as someone that he thinks is worth this other person's time. So those are my takeaways.
I think that's really excellent advice, Austin. And if I just may add, one thing I've been thinking about a lot is sort of nurturing the connections and the relationships I already have, thinking about who's already in your network. People I've lost touch with from UT Austin, from even the Bourne Scholarship, especially because now we're living such international lives with people for in different time zones. It's just really hard to keep track of where everyone is nowadays and making that time to connect with them. So I would just say, like, an idea would be to revisit sort of those connections you've had and just continuing to nurture and follow up on those before branching out even further.
That's excellent. I wonder if our students who have any questions, they would like to unmute themselves or add it into the chat. We do just have our remaining 10 minutes here of the event, so I want to make sure you get your questions out there and get that opportunity. Something that I, in the meantime, would like to pose for the panel is what advice might you have for students who don't necessarily feel fluent in the language that they studied, but they still want to leverage that cultural knowledge and that background that they did acquire after spending so much time studying over here at UT, how they can leverage that either professionally or personally? It can be, either aspect, if anyone would like to speak to that.
I can try to respond a little bit to that. For the personal aspect, I'd suggest like continuing to put yourself out there. So finding conversational groups. You might have some luck on Facebook or other like forums for people gathering, but I know like years ago there used to be a French like conversational group that would hang out in Austin that weren't UT students, but would have time to like talk to each other for all levels of people who speak French. So no matter if you're a beginner or advanced or there's ways to continue practicing. I know it's really vulnerable, but being in spaces where you're with other people and continuing just to try because our brain, we need to exercise those muscles. And not only will you be able to like continue being active in the language, but also, building up your confidence to keep practicing. Because I've been there in my French classes, like feeling like an imposter when other people would be in the region for so long. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm Creole, but I still feel like I don't really belong here. So like working through those things that you're feeling, which are completely normal, but we can like kind of put ourselves in situations. It's very vulnerable, but to kind of push through that. And then professionally, I think there's still ways that you might be able to work on your language skills, even if you're not fluent or it might not be directly tied to your projects. So there could be ways that you investigate topics or things that are pertinent to your field, maybe like consulting what the literature is saying about, I don't know, educational psychology, like what's the situation in France? And seeing like if you can draw on things related to your languages or fields of study that might then you can take away to inform what you're doing on a daily basis. So I think there's still ways to integrate your language with your work, even if you're not like fluent or speaking it at a native level. Uh, but yeah.
Thanks so much. Just giving the chance here for anyone to maybe either unmute or put in the chat any final questions that you might have. While we might wait on that, if I could ask each of the panelists to share some words of encouragement to our students just as they're navigating the spring semester. And, it's challenging to be a student. It's a very rewarding experience. It's a very challenging one. You all know that very well. And so just anything that could be a major takeaway and something to find motivating in what can sometimes be, I guess, difficult times for what we're kind of seeing. I would just like to ask maybe Tanya to start us off with any major takeaways or words of encouragement for students that you might like to share.
I would just say that UT Austin has so much to offer. I wish that I would have tapped into areas that I necessarily didn't gravitate towards right away, but you're not going to be in an environment again like an undergraduate campus. Graduate school is still an academic environment, but you don't have that same sort of social life and excitement and enthusiasm to just get to know one another. So I would say just take advantage of that and try to savor the moments because you won't be there forever.
Um, This is actually a good prompt to tee me up because I did want to monologue for just a moment. I think that, especially as you consider your future and your language study, I'll say a little bit about myself and I'll say a little bit about what you can do, which is that in my case, language led me to everything I've done and accomplished basically in my adult life. And it has been the wellspring from which my passions flow. So language in high school took me abroad. Going abroad and speaking the language got me scholarships at UT that paid for my education. It brought me to jobs and internships, and it brought me here to Washington, D.C., where, because of my language ability, I get to produce research and sit in with policymakers who listen to what I have to say because I have research that is rooted in language. And I'd say that the number one recommendation to you, particularly not just in the public service job market, but in the job market in general, is to let your passions lead you. If you love your language and you really enjoy it, you should just ride the roller coaster and let it take you where you want to go. And typically, the people who love what they do tend to get farther in life or get to end up at least somewhere that they're happy. And so I recommend you let those things, you let yourself pursue those things. The second thing I'll say, and I want to make a pitch to people because I'd be remiss if I didn't, why you should still take your language to public service. Obviously, things are a bit dark right now. It's not very great here in Washington, D.C. There's currently a federal hiring freeze on all jobs that are not related to national security. And there's multiple ways to frame this, whether it's a patriotic way, saying that your country needs you, or a more uh, humanitarian way, saying the world needs you. But I really highly recommend, especially if you are unsure about what you want to do, that a career in policymaking or a career in public service through your language is an incredibly valuable and enjoyable life path you can take. Whether that be in, protecting American national security, or that be for the United Nations or the European Union. Language is worth its weight in gold in public affairs. And there are so many people in Washington, D.C. who claim to be experts on Russia, who claim to be experts on China, who claim to be experts on X country, who don't know the language. And here, I really recommend that if you spend enough time to learn a language and fall in love with a country or the countries that speak it, the United States does need you, and it does need your expertise to make sure we don't make mistakes. So whether if you take it from a harm reduction point of view, that we need experts who understand the language to stop leaders you may not approve of from taking unwell thought through positions and rash actions, or if you see it from a position of I want to serve my fellow man, I care about the world, I want to use my language to help others. Public service is a great path to take. And I highly recommend you consider pursuing a path and taking your language abilities, which will be well compensated in Washington, D.C., and is probably the most stable place a linguist can get an employment in the United States, even in our world of AI.
I can go next. My piece of my advice that I would give would be I encourage you guys to have and keep an open heart and an open mind. That's what my mom has told me. She's never done me any wrong in that regard, or in any way. I love her. That's my angel. Um, but my path throughout college and graduate school was winding. But the one constant I can echo Cameron was language and being open to myself of listening to myself that, hey, I like French coursework. I want to keep pursuing this and build up the skills and the toolbox that I didn't receive from other coursework. I love my government major, but the ways that I thought I had to think in my French coursework, engaging with literature and language and linguistics, that challenged my brains in ways that my other classes didn't. And then pivoting when I became a PhD student away from Western Europe, from French into a completely different direction with Slavic languages, an area, or I didn't even know what Bosnian sounded like when I started learning Bosnian. But trusting in myself that, you know, I was going to follow in my substantive passions of delving into concepts of ethnicity, nationality, how we categorize ourselves, and, wanting to explore these stories and knowing the responsibility that comes with that of learning language. So, one, listening to yourself, being open to the fact that your path might be winding, but if you keep asking questions to yourself, ask people around you, ask people that are younger than you, because we can learn from everyone, but also older than you too, because I could not have done any of this without the guidance of my professors, and other like staff members who put me in contact with other academics other professionals when I decided that I wanted to leave academia. They still were people that helped guide me on my path forward. So keep asking questions to yourself, to those around you, and listen to yourself because, you're the person who writes your story and you're in charge of that.
I think y'all have all covered it on. I don't have anything else revolutionary to share, honestly.
Thank you all so much. Really incredible insights, Dr. Garza, for moderating, all four of you for giving insight into your backgrounds, where it's led you to today. It's just incredible to see, and I know that you all are willing to stay in touch with our students, which is so generous. Obviously connecting on LinkedIn, sharing emails, staying in touch. We know that networking piece is so crucial, and fostering these relationships means everything. So we just appreciate that immensely. Just a quick thing for those that maybe signed in after our introduction, I really would appreciate any students who have not yet scanned this QR code to use your EID to sign in. Please do so. It helps us keep track of programming in order to better inform us and provide the programming that students seek and the kinds of support and insight that you all want. We're definitely here to continue these types of discussions. Again, a huge thank you to Texas Language Center, every single one of the panelists, Tanya, Ariel, Cameron, Austin, for being here today. And I just cannot wait to see what you all continue to do moving forward. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Carolina, and thanks to those amazing panelists. Thank you for telling your stories and sharing them with us all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.